All these teams out here needing a head coach, and everybody's talking about Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen. And why do I get the feeling Liam Cohen ain't going nowhere? We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You heard what she said, your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On NFL Barbershop Show. That's right, been a barber for a long time, and I'm still talking just like a barber. We appreciate you joining us here on Locked On NFL each and every day, and reminding you wherever you get your podcasts, whether you watch them or whether you listen to them, make sure you tap into that location each and every time. Locked On NFL is the show that is dedicated to using the local experts to show you all of the latest stories around the NFL, and today is no different. Kevin Ostricher, as always, from Locked On Ravens, joins us today, and here's what we're going to talk about. The Steelers, they might need a doctor or a medic, right, to get healthy for the run into the playoffs. Of course, Ostricher knows about the Steelers because they just beat Pittsburgh for the first time in a long time. We'll discuss that. Also, did the Raiders just win baby mantra backfire and make them handicapped when it comes to drafting their future quarterback? We'll talk about that. Packers are serious contenders, and they've already, they've always been one, but no, I think it's getting even more and more evident, and we'll discuss the reason why. We're going to start, though, talking about Liam Cohen. Why Liam Cohen isn't going anywhere. That doesn't mean he ain't going to get a raise or a promotion. We're going to talk about Todd Bowles' future in Tampa. But today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. You can start and end the season with a big return in FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, make sure you tap in to Locked On NFL over on Amazon Music. That is Locked On NFL over at Amazon Music. Kevin Ostricher, we're not going to waste no time. Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson, both of them have been talked about ad nauseum about getting jobs around the National Football League. You got to have more than two candidates, man. I think you're going to have more than two jobs open.
Yeah, I expect there to be a lot of jobs open here. And Wig, I scratched my cornea, so my eyes going all funky, so I can't see as well today. But here's what I can see. The NFL is wide open in terms of head coaching opportunities because you're going to have teams like Chicago, and I think maybe the Giants are going to move on from Brian Daboll. But then you have like those surprise playoff teams that maybe are one and dones. Maybe they don't live up to their expectations, and that's been happening for a while, and you can't stay stuck. You can't stay complacent. So while you get into the big dance, you achieve that goal. No one's handing out participation trophies. Hey, here you go. Participated in the NFL playoffs 2024. That's not the goal. The goal is to host the Lombardi, to continue to ascend in that playoff success. And I know we're going to talk about it here, but there could be some teams that you might not think are going to fire their coaches that fire their coaches because these teams want to take it to the next level, not just stay as a wild card team for the next 5 seasons.
And that is where we start in Tampa. I'm glad you said that, man, because Tampa has a history. They have a history of moving on from coaches that you don't think they need to be moving on from, right? And I want to show you something that James Yarko from Locked On Bucs said. This was over a month ago. This is when Tampa was unhealthy and not struggling. Listen to this clip from his show, and then I'll tell you why it's so important and relevant right now.
The only way I see Bowles as the head coach is if they go on a really crazy run here. They're going to have to go on some sort of heater. I mean, we're talking 6-1 down the stretch, win a playoff game. Again, it would then be a little hard to fire him in that position, but I don't know. The odds are certainly stacked against Todd Bowles surviving this season as of right now. I do not believe you fire Todd Bowles before the end of the year unless it really goes sideways. Let's say they come out of the bye week. You lose to the Giants. You lose to the Panthers.
Oh, God.
He can go. At that point, he can go. You make someone the interim, not Liam Cohen. You make someone else the interim. Could be Larry Foote for all I care. And you move forward.
All right, so here's the significance of all of that. They did go on a heater. They win games, and people were like, oh, wait a minute, that's the only team they're getting healthy. It's the only team that have beaten both the Lions and the Eagles fair and square. They look really, really good, right? And then they lost that game to the Dallas Cowboys the other night. And nobody expected that to happen. And all of a sudden, now it's the team that has this history. Remember, I'm going to go back. They had Dirk Cutter as their offensive coordinator. He was a hot coaching candidate, and they fired their coach, who was 9-7 at that time, in Lovie Smith. Took a lot of heat for it because it was the second time they did it. They actually fired Tony Dungy and hired John Gruden. That worked. Dungy went on to the Colts and won a championship there. Okay, so they've done this twice. Why would they not do it again, especially when Dave Canales, now looking very successful at the end of his first season with Carolina after a slow start? They have to be very careful that Liam Cohen, who is a hot candidate, I'm telling you right now, the Jaguar fan base wants him so bad it's not even funny, who is a hot candidate in coaching. They have to make a decision. Are we going to move forward now and fire someone who actually won a Super Bowl, and Todd Bowles, who is one of the most respected people in the National Football League? Or do we allow our coach to be poached again and turn ourselves into the farm system for offensive coordinators turned head coaches?
And you always have those teams that are head coach factories, offensive coordinator factories, and they just continue to churn out really talented coaches. And honestly, Wig, relating it back to what I went through in Baltimore last year, there was a lot of conversation about Mike McDonald and how great he was as their defensive coordinator. The Ravens don't get it done in the playoffs. And there was conversation about like, hey, should the Ravens move on from John Harbaugh? There's this great young coach on your staff who's definitely going to go and be a head coach somewhere else if you don't bring him back in a promoted role. The Ravens decided to bring back Harbaugh, Mike McDonald now over in Seattle. So there are a lot of different teams that go through this type of thing. But here's my thing, and I brought up that complacent point earlier because one of my biggest pet peeves in sports is complacency, where I get that there are going to be down years. I get that there are going to, not every year is going to be just like this ascension until you win a championship. Sports are really unpredictable. But for a team like Tampa, who I think does have a lot of talent, they have found something in Baker Mayfield. And by no means do I think Todd Bowles is this horrible coach. Like I'm not saying that whatsoever. But you look at the way that this playoff picture looks in the NFC right now, and if Tampa doesn't make the playoffs and Atlanta goes on to win the South, I mean, you're already coming off of a couple of years where you're like, yeah, it was a good year, but it wasn't really like a great year. And that to me is complacency. I think that if you move on from Todd Bowles, you promote this great young coach who already has familiarity. I think that could help a team like Tampa Bay take the next step, because then you're able to build out that offense around him even further. And in my opinion, that's what a lot of teams need to do moving forward here.
Yeah, I'm always wary with hiring play callers and play callers only. I think it's a little bit different, though, when the offensive coordinator is basically the head coach of the offense. Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded coach, and that's not to cast aspersions on him and say that he is not actually running the whole team, because obviously he is. But I do think from a supervisory standpoint and an experience standpoint, when you don't know how a play caller like Ben Johnson, who coaches for an offensive-minded coach, albeit a tight end, and Dan Campbell, you don't know how he would function if he had to run the whole show. Rather, when you look at Todd Bowles, it appears that whoever the offensive coordinator is has a lot of power, and that does give you a little bit of a hint how that person would be as a head coach. So I think that is the thing that is so enticing about Liam Cohen. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about those Packers, man. The Packers up in Green Bay, who they kind of replaced Minnesota as the team that quietly nobody's talking about anymore, and they should be. We'll discuss the Green Bay Packers, their win last night, and what their immediate future in the playoffs looks like. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. That is right, man. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. That's right. I love being and betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. I've always checked out Jonathan Taylor because he's always finding the end zone if he's not dropping the ball. Derrick Henry is definitely going to find it. And, of course, Saquon Barkley, man, is the absolute truth. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Right along with Kevin Ostricher, riding shotgun here on Locked On NFL on a Tuesday. Happy holidays to all of y'all, too, here on Christmas Eve. My boy, Kev, Green Bay. They have lost to a bunch of really, really good teams like Minnesota, like the Lions, the Eagles. I mean, they've had a tough going at it when they had to deal with these really, really good teams, but they got a little bit healthy. And with the exception of Christian Watson, who got banged up last night when someone fell on his knee, Jordan Love seems like he's ready. The offensive line is ready. Coach Hafley has done a real, real good job with that defense. They got a lot of weapons. Josh Jacobs looks like he is everything that they thought he was going to be. This is a little dangerous team in Green Bay that people are just kind of looking past a little bit.
Man, can we take some of these NFC North teams and put them in the AFC South or something?
Don't be talking about the AFC South.
hey, we can move the Titans over to the NFC North, and we can put we can put the Vikings over in the AFC South. We need a bit of a power distribution, evenness throughout the
redistribution of competence, right?
Exactly, but. I mean, look, Green Bay's a heck of a team. And I know that there were some questions early in the season. Jordan Love got injured, and it was kind of like a slow-ish start in terms of like, oh, Malik Willis is playing a couple games, and how does Josh Jacobs fit in their offense? But you're getting a lot of great production out of your young wide receiver group. Green Bay, they trusted their young wide receivers, and it's paid off for them. I think the defense, I mean, you have a lot to like if you're the Packers. And this is why the NFC is so crazy, because obviously with the way that the playoff seeding is structured, you're going to have probably a 13-2 or 14-3 wild card team, followed by another, double-digit plus win wild card team. Green Bay probably 11 to 13 wins on the year. So I'm telling you, if you're a team like the Rams, if you're a team like the Falcons, you're a team even like the Eagles, whoever gets that 2 seed, Lions, Eagles, Vikings, whoever gets it, you might be looking at a one and done, because this NFC we talked about, I think, all year, Wig, how the AFC has all these like power teams, and we're ready. Oh, the Jets are going to be great, and the Dolphins are going to be great, and all these teams. Now it was the NFC the whole time. We just didn't see it.
Yeah, we didn't see it. Somebody who did see it, Peter Bukowski. Peter raised a stink the other week about probably reseeding these teams because of that. Of course, I had to take the other side of it, and I disagreed with him. But I will give credit. It started like a week's worth of really, really good conversation. And Peter always does a really, really good job at that. In fact, I think he's going to do it right now. Here's about 90 seconds of Peter Bukowski after their win, Green Bay's win last night against the Saints.
I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, with 3 quick takeaways from the Packers' dominant 34-0 win over the New Orleans Saints on Monday night that they didn't have to have. And that's the first point. They took care of business in a way that showed they are tuning up for a postseason run. They did not have to battle and belittle and dominate and bully, if we're going to add the alliteration here, the New Orleans Saints the way that they did. Not with all the players that they had out, but they did it anyway, a mark of a championship team. And it is that physical side of this team on offense and now defense as well that marked this game. This defense gets the first shutout of the 2024 regular season. It's almost 2025. And the Packers are the ones getting this first shutout. The Commanders just beat the Eagles And they almost let this Saints team come all the way back to beat them last week. And the final point, Brandon McManus is such a boon for this team. It has been such a huge pickup to get him. I think Matt LaFleur let him kick that monster 50-plus yarder at the end of the first half just to say that he did it, just to say, hey, man, we trust you to do those things. They haven't needed it, but they're getting it anyway.
My man Peter Bukowski, man, giving the kicker some props, but he does make a good point. They did look like a team, and this is going to segue to our next team. They look like a team that's finally gotten healthy, and they're greasing themselves up while other teams are getting banged up, like Philly. Even though I don't think Jalen Hurts' injury is going to be long-term, but mainly Detroit. Since the last time they played Detroit already had half the damn team on injured reserve. Well, the other half has gone on injured reserve since the last time they played them. And then there's this thing about Minnesota where at the end of the day, it is still Sam Darnold, right? And no matter how well he's played this year, the playoffs is a whole different animal. Is Peter making a good point? And is Green Bay as scary as he makes it sound like?
I think they are. I mean, there are always those teams that you overlook. And I know, Wig, you've done a really good job this year of making sure people do not forget about the Minnesota Vikings. But this whole NFC North division outside of Chicago, which has honestly been a pretty big disappointment regardless. But you have those three NFC North teams. All of them are incredible. And honestly, if you told me the beginning of the year, any three of them won the North, my pick was Detroit. I would have been a little shocked if it was not Detroit. But you told me, okay, Detroit has all these injuries and this, that, and the other. You told me Sam Darnold was having the year he was having. I'd be like, okay, hold on a second. I don't believe you there. But then you have a Green Bay team that just kind of feels like this underdog almost, where it's, again, they don't have that, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, number one wide receiver. Josh Jacobs coming over from Vegas was okay. Is it really going to work? Jordan Love, there were questions about if he was going to continue to take the next step. This Green Bay team feels like it's been counted out for most of the season. And I've been really impressed because it's like guys that should be household names because they're really good, but aren't because they don't have the biggest names in the world. But you have those underrated players and a lot of them, and that makes your football team really good.
They've done such a good job in the draft, man. You almost forget that they let go a Hall of Fame quarterback, the top 5 quarterback out of all time, and then first ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver, and they just keep on ticking. They also lost David Bakhtiari in that, who was an all-pro left tackle, and they keep on ticking. And then they traded they let their running back Aaron Jones go, and they just keep on ticking. Green Bay is the epitome of the way an organization needs to be run. And a couple of years ago, everybody was mad at them because of the way they were treating Aaron Donald, according to people. Well, guess what? Nobody's mad at him about that now. In fact, a lot of people wish Aaron could go back and get some more of that punishment that people were accusing Green Bay of doing. But the other organization that is well run, I hate to say it, is Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you don't want to hear it. Ostricher.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the Steelers in segment 3, because they too are a team that had played really well, and then they started getting banged up. They got some injuries the other day. Chris Carter's going to discuss that. And then we're going to ask the question, did the Raiders just win baby mantra mess up their draft status when it comes to them getting a quarterback? We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Prize Picks. There is no better place for you to go than Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money. I said it, man. Y'all need to hear it. 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards doing Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Jared Goff throwing for far more than 230 passing yards, and for Saquon Barkley to, of course, get more than 1 touchdown. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and all my friends. Just download the Prize Pick app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks. Run your game. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had 2 of them coming out and it was for the same thing. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for them. That's right. Rocket Money made it easy. It made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower bills so you can grow your savings. For me, it's one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore. People just taking monthly money out of my bank account, and I had no idea where it was going and what it was coming out for. That's right. And they took care of me at Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. Rocket Money/locked on. All right, rolling along here on the third segment with my brother on Christmas Eve, my man, Kevin Ostricher. We've been talking about Liam Cohen maybe not going anywhere, but still getting that promotion that he wants and staying right there in Tampa. We talked about the Green Bay Packers and their ability to be contenders. Now, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that had beaten the Baltimore Ravens 8 out of 9 times. And the other day, they suffered their first loss. It was a close nip and tuck game. I'm going to give you a chance, Ostricher. I thought Baltimore was playing with their food for a minute, and I'm like, this is going to turn into another one of those games. But you guys were able to turn it up and turn it out.
Yeah, it was a big win for the Ravens. And fourth quarter, I think Baltimore snatched Pittsburgh's soul. I mean, it felt like
I heard you say that the other day. You said it snatched their soul, dog?
Yes, because here's the thing. The Ravens talked a big game all week about how they understood that Pittsburgh had kind of been the big brother over the past handful of seasons. And that was all, so I saw Steelers fans saying, oh, Ravens are the little brother. They're the little brother. Well, the little brother went out there and dominated the Steelers in the fourth quarter. And it was a weird, wacky game. Like, the Ravens had incredible fumble luck. Lamar had a fumble early. They had a punt return fumble. They were able to get those back. Or Darius Washington, it looks like Russell Wilson is going to walk into the end zone and the Steelers are going to go up 14-7. He fumbles the ball. But the Ravens have been the most penalized team in the league for a long time. They rank last in nearly every statistical major penalty category. They had 2 penalties for 10 yards against Pittsburgh on Saturday, which was huge. I mean, that's a big part of it. Now, the Steelers, they did not have all their players. They missed 3/4 of their starting secondary for most of the game. George Pickens was not there. I'm not saying TJ Watt was fully healthy either, because he wasn't. So there are those conversations to be had, and I'm not trying to just gloss over that fact. Because if these two teams meet up in the playoffs for a third time, which is not out of the realm of possibility, I think we could see a really good game. But I thought that Baltimore, they wanted this game badly because they understood the implications. And let's face it, Wig, you can't let your most hated rival in the Steelers celebrate winning your division title on your home field. You can't do it.
You can't. But those injuries did have a lot to do with it. I'm going to take up for Chris Carter just a little bit. And actually, I'm going to let him speak about them getting all those guys back. You're right. They don't have a chance in whatever to beat Baltimore when they're not healthy. Those games are always close. In order to get healthy, in order to go where the Steelers have a chance to go, they got to get healthy. Here's Chris Carter with a little report on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast, here with another Steelers update after a Steelers practice as the Steelers get ready to take on the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day. I'm here at the Steelers practice facility where they completed their Monday practices. Good news for most of the players who were injured. There were full participants in a lot of directions. Deshaun Elliott back as a full participant. George Pickens back as a full participant. Also Larry Ogunjobi, Dante Jackson, 4 players who missed the Steelers' loss to the Ravens and could be big helpers in this upcoming game against the Chiefs. However, Joey Porter Jr. not practicing, Ben Skoranek not practicing, Justin Fields limited participant there. The Steelers getting healthier, but still not going to be having some people. Dante Jackson being back could be a good sign for the secondary. We'll talk about more of the impact of these players and what we heard from Russell Wilson and the coordinators all next on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and get us on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube.
Detroit being the outlier, you can lose multiple players. You just can't lose them all from one group. And Pittsburgh had their entire secondary, with the exception of Minkah Fitzpatrick, out. I don't know what kind of stuff the sorcery Detroit got going on. They lose 22 people and they still keep beating the heck out of people. But that's the weirdest thing. But for Pittsburgh, it is imperative that they get these guys healthy because they already played the game in a phone booth. They need everybody, all hands on deck.
Yeah, and this to me is a situation where if you're the Steelers, there's a real possibility they lose out their Final Four. And I get that, look, you cut off after the regular season ends. It's a whole new season after the regular season ends. But to me, man, having momentum going into the playoffs is a good thing. Now, it's not the only thing. For example, if we're bringing the Ravens back into it, of course, I cover Locked On Ravens, so I know a little thing or two about that team. The year they won the Super Bowl back in 2012, they lost 3 of their Final 4 games. And they went into the postseason, they ran the table, they won the Super Bowl. It's not everything. But, for example, what happened in that Ravens and Steelers game was Corey Trice, who really hadn't played a lot, he was matched up on these receivers. And, man, I hope he didn't see too much of Lamar Jackson in his nightmares after the game because he was struggling out there. So it's good to have that experience, right? It's good to have guys that are familiar, and look, young guys can go out and they can contribute on a daily basis. Right? We see it every single week in the NFL. But when you're a team that has all this talent and you line up and you say, hey, we can match up with you, and all of a sudden you're down to your 5th string corner and your 5th string wide receiver, that changes things, especially when the guys you're missing, a la George Pickens, for example. I mean, Calvin Austin, heck of a player, by the way. I think he already is kind of a stud, in my opinion, in this league. Not having George Pickens changes around that entire offense and what they can do. That's a big thing. And so the goal here, especially with these teams, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Houston, playing 3 games in 11 days, that's essentially you're saying, hey, normal turnaround time is a week for games. The NFL is saying you play 3 games in less than 2 weeks now. Crazy. Because obviously we can talk about the reasoning for that, and I think we all know what it is. But at the end of the day, I think Pittsburgh is a talented team. I think they do have talent, but your talent has to be on the field.
Has to be on the field. Speaking of which, there's a team that's lost a lot on the field recently. And I know what it's like to start planning for the draft like halfway through the season. Trust me, I'm all too familiar with it, right? But I've often said something, KO, that you can't fake football. Therefore, nobody's going to be out there trying to tank. And it's a violent sport, and I promise you, if you're playing halfway, you're going to get hurt way worse than if you're playing full strength. Guys are also putting out tape. So you have people that have the motivation to put out good tape. They don't want to look bad on tape because they need their future. And then you got a coach like Antonio Pearson in Las Vegas, who played the game, who was very intense. Obviously, things haven't gone their way. This whole Shador thing, like going to the Raiders, and why did the Raiders win a game against the Jaguars that allowed the Jaguars to get in front of them the other day? I want to talk to you about it. I'm going to first read something that Antonio Pierce said. He said, we don't do this to lose. We don't do this for anybody's fantasy football team. We don't do this for anybody's draft projections. None of that blank matters to us. The only thing that matters is winning, and that's all we do. That is a very admirable thing to say. It is true. The sentiment is one that I absolutely agree with and understand totally. But I also understand the fact that the only way you're going to get Shador Sanders is probably to have the first overall pick. And I understand why Raider fans are like, dude, we want to win. The only way we can win long term is to get that number 1 pick. Why the hell did you win that game the other day?
Yeah. For example, you want to talk about like the New England Patriots, who wanted no business winning that game against the Buffalo Bills. I agree with you, Wig. The players out there, they're going to play hard. They're going to play to win, right? You can't tell the players, hey, we want to lose these games. That won't fly. That creates a bad vibe in the organization, and honestly kind of taints their image, in my opinion. But, for like Cleveland, for example, Jameis Winston clearly was giving them the best shot to win. And then now it's DTR with Bailey Zappi as the backup there. And they're kind of like, yeah, well, Jameis isn't healthy, and maybe he'll be healthy, maybe he won't. And I'm just like, okay, I think we all know what's going on here. So the players on the field are going to play hard, play 100%, because they're playing for contracts, they're playing for pride, they're playing for everything. But obviously, the organizations have other goals. They want to get talented players, and you don't want to see a player that you want go to a team that is maybe even in your division because you want a meaningless game in December.
There's some Jaguar, but there's some Jaguar fans that are like, they wanted to win too, man. They were like, man, we don't care about the draft because the GM's going to mess it up anyway. They'll say that until the GM gets fired, a new GM comes in, the Jags have the number 1 pick, and they're able to get an extra number 1 pick and a second and a third for a team moving up 2 spots to take Shedeur Sanders. Then they'll be very, very happy about the position that they are in. So it's a catch-22, I understand it, but it's all good and fun. All right, man, make sure y'all tap into Locked On NFL each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. It's a double dose with Tyler Rowland, the Madman, in the morning, and then me in the barbershop in the afternoon. We both use the help of local experts to talk about the big stories from around the NFL. And that's what we do. That's what we've done. We have come, we have conquered, and now it is time to leave. Kevin Ostricher, have a very, very Merry Christmas with you and your family. And check me out. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with another show. Until then, you guys take care. We'll see you next time.